The first drone didn't announce itself. No scream of engines, no rocket plume, no dramatic silhouette rising into the sky. It arrived the way a mistake arrives, quietly, almost casually, just a speck on a screen, a moving dot that didn't care who was watching. Out there, the sea looked busy. Radar clutter. Small returns. Normal life on a patrol route. But the tactical picture told a different story. A pattern was forming. Not random. Not a lone test run. A formation made to look harmless until it wasn't. On a modern ship, everything is built around decision speed. Sensors track. Displays update. Teams know what comes next even before anyone speaks. There's procedure for drones, procedure for aircraft, procedure for anything that threatens to become a headline. When a threat crosses certain thresholds, the chain tightens, locks, alerts, confirmations. The bridge watches the lead contact. Then it goes wrong. Not wrong in the way people imagine when a defense system fails, no impact flash, no obvious debris cloud. The drone simply stops behaving like something that's supposed to be in control. Its path wobbles. Its movement turns erratic for a moment, like it has lost the plot. Then it drops, too fast, too sudden, to be explained as a normal mechanical issue. The system didn't look cinematic. There was no visible streak cutting across the sky. No obvious projectile arc. No thunderous interception event that would make a human brain say, "That's what happened." It was more like watching a plan malfunction. And then the rest of the wave arrives. More dots. More tracking lines. More time pressure. The bridge team realizes they're seeing a new kind of interruption, one that doesn't follow the usual rhythm of missile defense. Because with missiles, the world is full of signals. You can often tell when a shot happened. You can see the timing. You can feel the rhythm of engage, observe, re-engage. Missiles are loud in every sense, visually, mechanically, and financially. But this was different. This time, the defender didn't fire a projectile that announces itself to the sky. It caused targets to stop being functional without the same kind of event that comes with an explosion. The screen still shows contacts, still shows movement, but the outcomes are changing faster than the crew's instincts are comfortable with. For the first few minutes, people are careful. There's always the chance it's a malfunction, a coincidence, a partial success. Nobody wants to declare victory on a display that could still surprise them with a failure later. Then the pattern repeats. Drone after drone loses stability. Each one seems to fall apart at the moment the system insists it should. The sailors on deck don't have a cinematic view, but they have something more important: they can feel when operations change. The tone of the ship changes first. People stop treating the situation like background noise. Jokes disappear. Movement becomes purposeful. People check screens with a different kind of focus. Less, "we'll see," more, "we're watching the same outcome happen again." And in the middle of that attention, something else stands out: the defender's rhythm is not like it used to be. With traditional defense, engagements often become a financial treadmill. If you can't stop the incoming wave quickly, you're forced into trade-offs: shot availability, reload cycles, engagement selection. Even a successful defense can be expensive in a way that doesn't show up in the victory speech. The attacker counts on that. That's the cold part of modern cost exchange. It's not only about who can build a weapon. It's about who can afford to use it repeatedly, accurately, under pressure. The attacker brings numbers. Cheap threats. Mass-produced targets. The goal isn't to break through with one brilliant move. The goal is to make the defender keep paying. Every time the defender commits to a missile shot, the defender burns resources that don't replenish instantly. Even if those missiles are effective, the math tightens with every engagement. The attacker doesn't need every drone to hit. It only needs enough drones to force enough responses. enough responses become a crisis. And once the defender's inventory starts to look limited, the defender's choices start to look constrained, because decision-making changes when the cost of each action becomes emotionally and operationally real. But then the ship engages again, and again, with a different kind of weapon, one that changes what engagement even means. This weapon isn't a launcher with a magazine mentality. It's built around power, dwell time, and precision. Instead of firing something that travels and impacts, it concentrates energy on the target's critical structure and forces failure through thermal and mechanical disruption. That's the theory. But theory isn't what matters in a real engagement. In reality, physics and environment step in: humidity, sea salt, atmospheric distortions, dust and smoke, distance effects. A concentrated energy weapon is only as good as the conditions that allow the energy to remain usable when it reaches the target. So the first lesson isn't, a beam always works. The first lesson is, a beam works when it can deliver the required effect at the required time. The second lesson is how fast the system can do it, and how that speed changes the defender's ability to keep up with the attacker's plan. Because the attacker planned for the defender's tempo. They planned around the time between shots, around the need to account for each engagement, around the psychological weight of repeatedly firing expensive solutions into a sky full of targets. When the defender's system shifts the tempo, when it can keep responding without the same per engagement payment, the attacker's original accounting breaks. The defenders are no longer locked into the same cost rhythm. They can absorb the wave with fewer of the expensive events that used to define the response. And that changes the attacker's confidence. If the defender stops reacting the way the attacker trained for, the attacker's timetable becomes unreliable. Their assumption, that every threat will trigger a similarly costly outcome, starts to collapse. But it doesn't end with drones. Because once a wave begins to fail, the attacker does what rational attackers do: it adapts. It changes the characteristics of what it sends. It accelerates timelines. It adds complexity. It switches the kind of target that forces different countermeasures, faster objects that reduce how long a defender can keep energy focused, threats that complicate tracking, threats that stress the system's ability to maintain an accurate engagement track long enough to finish the job. Now the defender has to make decisions again, but this time the decisions are about which part of a layered defense architecture can meet the engagement demands. It's not just, can we defeat drones? It becomes, can we defeat drones under changing geometry, can we defeat faster threats, and, can we still keep the tempo when the environment stops being friendly? Some shots are cleaner than others. Some engagements take longer. Some targets don't sit still long enough for the same dwell effect. And when dwell isn't available, the story turns, because modern defense isn't one weapon, it's a system of overlapping options. When the directed energy approach struggles with certain engagement constraints, another method comes into play, not to destroy, but to disrupt. The goal shifts from destroying the target outright to making its ability to choose a correct aim point fail. That can sound abstract, but it's brutally practical. If a threat relies on guidance sensors to select where to go, then anything that interrupts that guidance can turn an intelligent weapon into a dumb projectile. Not by stopping it instantly. By forcing it to make decisions based on bad information. If you can blind, confuse, or saturate the seeker logic, if you can deny it a reliable understanding of the environment, then the weapon's autonomy becomes a liability. Instead of guiding itself toward the right target, it drifts toward uncertainty. And uncertainty in war is another kind of victory, because it spreads damage away from where it matters. The ship's layered response is what keeps the story from being a single weapon highlight. The beam stops what it can. The disrupt and degrade layer compensates when targets change. Sensors keep working. Operators keep selecting the right actions. And the attacker keeps sending targets, because stopping requires more than bravery. It requires the attacker to realize its strategy no longer produces the outcomes it paid for. Over time, the attackers discover what the defenders knew before the first drone arrived. A defense that can adapt its engagement economy doesn't just stop threats. It changes the attacker's incentives. The attacker's plan depends on the defender being forced into an expensive loop, an always shoot, always pay cycle. But when the defender can respond without burning the same kind of cost per engagement, the loop tightens against the attacker instead. What happens next isn't one dramatic explosion. It's a gradual retreat of confidence. The wave continues for a while longer, because neither side gives up instantly. But the attackers start to notice something important: even their best efforts are no longer producing the same level of progress per attempt. The defender's outcomes improve faster than the attacker's ability to recover. Eventually the timing collapses. The attacker doesn't just need to get through. It needs to get through within a window that matches its assumptions about the defender's resources, about the defender's reaction rhythm, about the defender's capacity to keep acting at scale. And when those assumptions fail, the entire operation becomes a sunk cost contest that the attacker cannot win. On the deck, the hardware that made the difference still looks unimpressive. That's part of why these moments surprise people. If you're expecting a weapon to look like a weapon, you'll miss the revolution happening right in front of you. The installation might look like a practical component bolted to the ship's world, something maintenance could ignore, something sailors could step over without thinking about how it changes physics. That container-like presence, the quiet integration into deck operations, the lack of cinematic drama, it all hides the real story. This defense isn't built around flashy moments. It's built around repeatability. It's built around using something abundant, electrical power, and converting it into a focused effect on target. It's built around the idea that the future of naval defense might not be about outrunning threats with bigger missiles. It might be about rewriting what a shot means. And the last thing the crew learns, the lesson that lingers long after the final contact drops from the display, is this. In war, the next revolution rarely announces itself with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives like a quiet answer to an old problem. An answer that breaks the cost trap. An answer that forces the attacker to pay more than it can afford. And when that happens, the sky stops being a place where missiles decide outcomes, and becomes a place where control does.